This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
This is Everything Elite, the world's best podcast devoted exclusively to all elite wrestling and the elite extended universe. I'm Aaron Bentley, and I am joined, as always, by my good friend, Iron Mike Spears. What's up, Mike?
Hey, y'all. It's your old pal, Iron Mike Spears. I'm doing pretty well. Fall has come to the mountain compound, so I'm feeling pretty good. I was able to bust out the flannel. It's been debating if this year, as it's been known in EE canon, that this has been a knife year for me. So this has been the year of Iron Knife Spears. I'm debating if in 2020, because you got to look forward, you got to think ahead. I'm debating if I want to go with like the mountain man hunk aesthetic, or if I want to go really into vacation mode. You know, just steal something from Rich, just wear a whole bunch of Hawaiian shirts, bright Bahama shorts, and a Panama hat everywhere. So I was hoping to get your thoughts on this, AEB. Which one do you think I should go towards?
I mean, for pure comedy for me, I want to support the vacation style.
Vacation Spears?
Yeah, that's where I'm leaning. But honestly, I need to see, not quite a lookbook, but I need to see some options here so I can really know what I'm choosing between.
I understand. This is kind of putting you on blast here about my own personal aesthetic choices. So I respect that.
That's what friends are for, Mike.
Absolutely.
Our other friend, he's right over here. He's Nate, a.k.a. Epitasis. What's up, Nate?
Hello, friends. See, I only add like one interest to my repertoire maybe every 4 or 5 years. So I'm staying steady on the aesthetic, on the brand, on the interest for 2020. Just, full speed ahead with no changes or personal introspection whatsoever.
I just feel like I always got to keep on just freshening it up, offer a new idea, a new aesthetic. I mean, I did Western wear last year. This time I've just got obsessed with knives. The knife show's this weekend. So, it's like variety in my life, Nate. But I understand you like consistency. You only want to add in things slowly, which makes me want to ask, how are your succulents doing?
Great question, Mike. Today is a succulent day. After the recording of the podcast, I will be watering my succulents. I would say 3 of the 4 strictly succulents are doing pretty well. One of them seems a little droopy, turning a little brown perhaps. So going to give that guy some extra care, talk to it a little bit, maybe give it a pep talk about masculinity. That's coming up right after this. So stay tuned.
Well, folks, if you need a pep talk about masculinity, make sure you're following us on Twitter at Everything AEW. We do very masculine things on our Twitter account, but not in a toxic fashion. You can find me. I'm at Aaron Like the Car. Nate is at Epitasis. Mike is at Fuji. Hey, yeah, that's Fuji with 2 eyes, like Don Fuji. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. We're back on our Thursday night bullshit recording, so you're probably going to be seeing us on Friday mornings, but we're back on a normal schedule. So make sure you're getting that in your feed as soon as possible. Subscribe either by looking for Everything Elite on the podcast app of your choice, or by subscribing to the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. If you're on the podcast app, leave us a 5-star rating and a review, please. Help other people find the podcast. And you can sponsor this podcast if you'd like to. You go to redcircle.com/shows/everything-elite. That link is always in the show notes. You can just click it there, then click sponsor this podcast, or you can do a one-time sponsorship or a monthly sponsorship if you'd like. It's not a Patreon. We're not giving you anything for it. Just, if you want to give us a little for free, we would appreciate it. So I think we've had a few people sponsor this podcast. So thank you very much. All right. Here's what we're going to talk about this week and, pretty much every week from now until the end of time, best I can tell. We're going to talk about ratings, TV ratings. We got the new AEW numbers, the new NXT numbers to compare. We're going to talk about episode 2 of AEW Dynamite, the best and worst of what happened on AEW. And I want to talk a little about stocks of the wrestlers. Whose stock is up, whose stock is down. I might find a more interesting way to frame that for future episodes, but that idea.
We got to get away from the best and worst framing as well. Need a
Yes.
more unique brand that's a little with spandex adjacent. So we got to we got to take a new tack, I think.
How about all elite or all feet?
See, you're putting a negative connotation on feet, and we don't kink shame here. So could use some workshopping still, I think.
Yeah, that was just right off my head. Well, I'll work on it.
That's okay. That's all right. We're also, of course, going to talk about AEW Dark, the premiere episode, and what you might see next week on AEW Dark. What you're going to see, it's not a secret. And we will preview episode 3 or the 10/16 show in Philadelphia. So I say we get right into the ratings. It's not quite as exciting as last week, folks. What we have is that AEW dropped from 1.4 million to 1.018 million on TNT, added an additional 122,000 on True TV. There was this weird thing where there was a concern the Major League Baseball game was going to go over. They would have to move the second baseball game onto TNT, so AEW would have been on True TV, but none of that happened. But they still simulcasted Dynamite on both channels. So we get that drop. The demo, 18 to 49, they went from a 0.62 to a 0.46. So a little bit of a drop there. My big takeaway here, guys, is now I'll own up to it. I said I thought they would go up this week. Obviously, I was very wrong. You can expect a little drop off from, especially from a premiere. So this isn't the end of the world, but the worst part about it is it kills the narrative that AEW is just kind of bulldozing NXT and is challenging the hegemony of WWE, as our good friend Aaron Taub would say. So that's the biggest bummer about it to me. We won't know for a few weeks what this really means, but I'm just kind of bummed at what it does to the narrative.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit lower maybe than I would have guessed last week. I always expected that there would be a dip in the total viewership just because you're going to lose some of those curiosity viewers, people that tune in because they've seen all the program or all the advertising and want to see what the actual show is like. You're not going to appeal to all those people. Some of those people are going to want Georgia Championship Wrestling or Lucha Underground or something, and they're just not going to like the product. That's inevitable. So I always thought those people would probably tune out. Everybody else that wanted to see this show was definitely going to tune in. So it was perhaps a little bit down than I might have expected, but it did have stiff competition with playoff baseball, going head to head with possibly elimination games. I guess the silver lining here is, they're still above 1 million viewers, solidly above 1 million viewers if you factor in the True TV viewership. So you have to imagine that TNT is still pretty happy, even if, it's not over the moon, crazy ratings like we were looking at last week. And the other silver lining is they, NXT dropped considerably, and they continue to just demolish NXT. So, the NXT is kind of in rough shape at this point, I would think, because they have no young viewership whatsoever. They're getting outpaced, as Garrett Kidney, I believe, pointed out, by like Sean Hannity in terms of young viewership. They've lost this night to AEW at this point, and they would have to make some severe moves to, I think, come back.
They haven't just lost the night to AEW and to Hannity. I'm right now looking at the Showbuzz Daily top 50 original cable telecasts for yesterday, Wednesday, October 9th. And we have some big hitters, such as the international edition of House Hunters that has a better 18 to 49 there. They are tied with the NBA pregame show of a preseason game for 18 to 29. And they are just 0.02 of a point above Crank Yankers, which is a show I did not believe still existed.
Wow.
And
just came back.
Yeah. And it's overall, and it's just getting like 18 to 49 viewers there. But I didn't want to be really an agony aunt about this. I thought about being kind of the bad cop and just saying like, look, this is what's happening here. But when you start looking at the overall landscape of the television night that was last night, it's not just the fact that there were two big divisional games in baseball. You take a look at the network shows, and the Masked Singer completely trounced everyone. I mean, they just completely spanked everyone. And then you have all these Chicago shows on NBC, which are those like a Dick Wolf thing? Is that what he's doing now since SCU's over? I guess like it seems like that it's
SCU.
or
That sounds right.
SVU. Sorry, yeah.
Lord,
SVU.
That's a BTE bit right there. We got to DM Tony about that one because Law and Order SVU would draw YouTube views.
Absolutely. But yeah, you like look at this, and Turner had its like level of viewership that they wanted, and they're still well above it. I've looked at the baseball schedule going forward, and next week looks like it could potentially be a week where like we're getting to the point in the Major League Baseball playoffs that TV shows that the half the games are going to be moved to Fox, and then the other half will be on TBS, and there shouldn't be this weird simulcast situation. And let's call a spade here. This simulcast turned out to be like the best case scenario for them possible, because all that was on True TV was just like reruns of Impractical Jokers, but now they picked up an extra 120,000 fans watching the show that might not have, because it might just be weirdo and Impractical Jokers fans. So this to me was like walking into a test, hoping you got a B, and you came out of there for C-. You didn't fail, but you didn't do as well as you would hope you would. And it'll be interesting next week, because week 3, they have a loaded card, and it's arguably the biggest card they have going forward. I mean, it really kind of spanks the card they had this week and last week when you just take a look at title matches and tournament matches as well.
So before I should go back and not award this night necessarily to AEW over WWE entirely, because as Mike pointed out, Masked Singer crushing it here on Wednesday nights. Masked Singer apparently debuted this season on September 25th. Elias has not been in the WWE since September 10th. So if the Masked Singer is a big star-making opportunity for Elias and he's under one of those masks, could be a big coup.
I did not know that was a possibility out there. We kind of mentioned this, but the actual NXT numbers, they did 790,000, so they're down about 100,000. And they did a 0.23 in the demo, which is exactly half of what AEW did. So a bad week for NXT. Two things here. One, more evidence that these two shows do not share any sort of audience. They both went down. Nobody jumped to the other side. Beyond that, AEW to me is no longer competing with NXT. That's over. Like, NXT is not a competitive show with AEW. And what AEW is focused on now is how can they be competitive in the demo with other entertainment on TV on Wednesday nights.
Yeah, and how can they, they had competitive demo ratings with, relatively recent episodes of Raw and SmackDown. So how can they, maintain that and, maybe at some point become competitive in total viewership? It was kind of framed that AEW was going head to head with NXT, but again, AEW wants to be a major league, NXT is a minor league. So, those big boys have to be the eventual goal to be, knocking on that door.
Yeah. And if you look at the actual, all the different demos, the best news for AEW is that they stayed almost exactly the same in the male 18 to 49 demo. They went from a 0.69 to a 0.66. That's great news. Unfortunately, they dropped in just about every other category. So on one hand, when I hear people saying, well, baseball just kicked their ass, I'm like, okay, but who watches baseball? It seems to me that the main demo that also watches baseball stuck with AEW. So now it's a little different because you see that's not true. Old people watch baseball mostly, I know, but they're not losing in that big demo. So, and even in the olds, in the 50 plus, they went from a 0.34 to a 0.3. So, they're pretty consistent. So I'm worried about why they ran off a lot of young women, the really young men, the 12 to 34. I'm worried about where those people went. But if they can hold strong in the male 18 to 49, they can work at building up those other demos, especially considering the strength of characters they have in the women's division.
Wedding Singer. The Wedding Singer killed out all the
Masked
women.
Singer.
Oh, Masked Singer. Yeah. God, I am 2 for 2 tonight, am I?
Adam Sandler's a huge draw in his 80s get up. He's a huge, bringing in the ladies like crazy.
Yes,
draw.
especially, the 18 to 34s. But
That would make sense that a lot of these demos where AEW did poorly, that they would be attracted to that show. Like I could see that. I'm not sure why they would also be attracted to pro wrestling, I guess. So I'm just worried those people just left and aren't coming back. That's my biggest concern.
Well, I'll pitch this also. So the first episode had advertised matches with Cody versus Sammy Guevara. Those, of course, that's a hunk battle right there for sure. Had an advertised match with Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega, a acknowledged hunk in pro wrestling, and had the women's title match. This show did not have Cody advertised, did not have Kenny Omega advertised, just had the women's tag match advertised. Chris Jericho came out and tried to establish Sammy Guevara as a new sex symbol. But if you're paying attention to what's being advertised from week to week and you don't see that Cody and Kenny are going to be on here, and we know those are like it's confirmed draws for women, then maybe they're checking out something else and not waiting around to see if they happen to show up.
yeah, and I think that's something that will be very interesting to see with next week, because we do have all these matches already announced. There's probably still time for one more, and both the singles titles are up to bat this next week, and we'll see how that appeals, and we'll kind of get a better idea, like how Nate's saying, about who actually draws people in this promotion, because it's really hard over 2 weeks to give like some sort of trend. I know Dave Meltzer said give it 10 weeks and you're able to kind of tell here, but at least going from next week, we will have at least some sort of idea about where people are going, where people are saying. It should be stated this time we don't have the quarter hours in right now, whereas in last week's episode we had the quarter hours, so we saw where the rise and drop was.
Okay, so based on the drop this week and based on the card we know for next week, which we'll talk about later, but singles title challenges, will you be concerned if this number drops again? Is that like disaster area if they can't even maintain this number with the big matches they have announced?
Well, it's not a disaster, but it's a concern that you're not hooking new people if it drops again. At best, or really the worst best case scenario, obviously, is the number goes up. If the number goes down, it's bad when you're advertising these big matches, title matches. Like, we're not necessarily expecting Chris Jericho to drop a title here. The audience probably knows that, but they did a good job of heating Darby Allin up for that challenge next week. So if the number drops and people just aren't buying in that, hey, these are stars, these are people that I should be looking at as being significant wrestlers in this promotion and in the future of the business, then that's certainly a cause for concern. But not a disaster yet, because they're still on the hook for however many episodes of TNT, and they've got some time to hang in there, hopefully. And to quote the WWE, it's a marathon, I guess.
It's something that, for me, I feel like if they're just at about 1 million, as long as they don't have another 25% drop, I would feel okay. Just because it's hard to see at this time, like I said, like we don't have the trends really, but after this, we'll be able to see what's going on here. I would think that traditional wrestling logic says 2 title matches and then 2 big tournament matches should draw people in, but it's just a percentage of wrestling, a percentage of how TV is that viewership's eroding, and as long as your network's happy and as long as you're not looking terrible, then you're okay. But I would really be encouraged to see if they clawed back a little bit more in the next week. And especially because it looks like with sports, you're going to have a game on Fox. So that takes the Masked Singer, got it right that time, off the table. So that might help them out. And it's going to be interesting to see, because I don't know what else you would add to the show to make it like their biggest TV show possible. But because this is pretty close, maybe an Elite versus Inner Circle match would be the biggest matches in theory for a 5-match show if they're going to stick with that formula.
All right, well, let's get into talking about this week's episode. I guess first, we are going to get into what were our favorite things and least favorite things from the episode. But first, let's talk about it big picture and just kind of how you came out of the show feeling, the vibe of the show, and just what you thought when the show was over. Nate?
I was really happy with this show. I thought this was a better show than the first episode, and I came out of it like, oh, shit, like there might be good wrestling on television on a weekly basis now. Like this might be real. and that was, but really did not have any complaints whatsoever. If my thesis last week was that, the promotion at this point is both the good and the bad parts of WCW, this was just all the good stuff from WCW with less bad stuff. And like I said earlier, the Darby is like being heated up well. He's obviously a superstar in the making. They obviously have intentions with him, which is important for signaling to the crowd that, hey, you can get invested in this guy because we're invested in this guy. So yeah, I was happy. I was like, oh shit, that was the pilot episode of a TV show is usually a pretty weak episode. So week 2 is where you hopefully see what they're really made of.
Yeah, and when you just keep that first half hour by itself, it might be one of my favorite half hours of wrestling TV in the last few years, just because they understand how to have a hot match open up the show, a great promo, one of the better promos we've seen in a wrestling ring in a long time, and it's just consistency. There was a little bit of a dip, I feel like, partway through the show. I feel like that there was less matches that didn't work this week versus last week, so I'm pretty positive about it. And I've kind of been keeping track in my mind of when does the show feel tiresome to me after watching it, and I'm starting to believe that I'm not going to have that feeling, just because it was 10 o'clock and we all were just messaging in our group chats how stoked we were for the closing angle. So they do a great job, I feel like, of building up for week to week television, and that was one of those things that I was kind of concerned about going forward.
Yeah, I thought this was easily better than episode 1. I saw some people going the other way, and that was surprising to me. I thought this was a great episode. I struggled to come up with my least favorite parts of the show to talk about, which we'll get to in a little bit. And just the vibe is so good. It's just like, it feels good to watch it. The 2 hours flies by. They're doing a great job of, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but of giving us different people on a week-to-week basis, while also making sure that the stars are there and they keep a consistent presence on the show. But they also are just, I was really worried about non-wrestling segments on the first show. Not a problem on this show. It's just like, it is WCW. I mean, Nate said it, but like in all the best ways, like the show closing angle, which I'm sure we'll talk about, felt so WCW. The look, like, I thought that during week 1 that it looked like WCW, and then that kind of, goes back in the recesses of your mind. And then I just remember seeing Matt Jackson on the ropes, like when they very first came out, and the camera zoomed in on him, and just like the color, everything. I mean, I was just could not think of anything but Nitro. I mean, it was amazing. All right, well, let's talk about favorite parts of the show. So, Nate, I'm going to start with you. Give me your favorite part of Dynamite episode 2.
My favorite part of Dynamite episode 2 was probably the Chris Jericho angle. It was probably when Chris came out with his new unit, the Inner Circle, and just did very simple, effective stuff and introducing each one of them, telling the crowd why they're good, telling the crowd who they are and why they should care about them. Sort of established Sammy as being the hot young Spanish guy. Just had some great turns of phrase about Santana and Ortiz. Plugged a little Eddie Guerrero tribute in there. Talked about Jake Hagar, and then of course, like the thing everybody was freaking out about, the crowd started chanting "We the People," and he just shut the chant down. Told them it's old shit. We're not doing old WWE shit. We're doing good shit now. Absolutely fired the crowd up. People lost their minds. They were like, fuck yeah. It felt like WCW taking like a good hearty shot at the WWF, and not like a cheap like Voodoo Kin Mafia TNA shot, but like, oh yeah, no, you fucking owned them. You did it on national television opposite one of their shows. It was badass. He's like probably wrestler of the year at this point, regardless of whether he hits or misses in an individual match or not. He's just like putting on a superstar performance as the champion of a new company. And that was awesome. That was the first time in a long time where I've come away from a promo and been like, fuck yes, like pro wrestling, I'm fired up. That's exactly what I wanted last week with like a John Moxley, just an old school pro wrestling promo, talk to the camera, tell people why they should care, sell them on it, and he nailed every part of it.
Yeah, that was going to be the one I brought up. So I'll bring up my number 2, which was a burn down the house closing angle. I mean, just the way that it was something that I feel like that not a lot of promotions know how to do a 2-week payoff of, okay, the first week we have the big heel unit form and beat the crap out of all the noble baby faces. But week 2, the baby faces are the one that stand tall. And the person that was the cause of this was Darby Allin as the next world title challenger. He came down, skateboarding down to the ring in a way that did not feel insincere or inauthentic. Like it felt like that's a Darby thing for him to do. And he put a good hit on Jericho. He saved Bryce Remsburg from Jericho, which was kind of a good character defining moment for him. And then just like the interplay of, okay, first you had the fact that the babyface tag team got beat down, then lights go out, Cody tries to save his brother, and then he's doing okay for a little bit, but here comes the rest of the inner circle. Okay, what's going to save that? Oh, MJF's going to come down here. They have Cody up in like the crucifix, like the dead crucifix position, and it looked like for a second that he was going to turn, but no, they're going to tease us with this forever. Okay, he gets advantage for a bit. Now Jake Hagar comes in and just is a monster. Here comes the Bucks, and then they take over again, and then it ends with the Darby thing. It just was a very exciting Crash TV exit of a show, but done in a way that didn't offend your just logic and also paid off what happened the first week. And I like seeing week to week payoffs, and then we could have the payoff to Jericho and Darby next week as well. And it gets me really excited and pumped for what's coming next.
Yeah, it was an excellent angle. And like a low key part about it that I really liked was that they protected Jake Hager in that he kind of gets into it with Adam Page. And I thought for a second they were going to have Page lay him out in the ring. And I was like, fuck, this is like this huge guy. You got to build him up or protect his heat. But the only way they let Page kind of get over on him was once he got a chair. I was like, okay, I can buy that. Like he needs a weapon to go after this guy. So I appreciated that. I agree. I mean, Nate tweeted this, but like kind of a terrifying feud, like Hager and Page is kind of like, I'm not sure if that's going to work for Hangman.
I did like Hager's spots in the match. Like all he did was like 2 clotheslines, lariats, and they were both super effective and looked pretty great. So maybe he's not totally cooked and washed. I mean, granted, it was 2 clotheslines, but yeah, those singles matches could be rough if that's like a full gear matchup or something.
All right, my favorite part of the show. How have we gone this far into this episode without talking about the fucking Young Bucks versus Private Party match? Woo! So this match starts the show. They again go with a video package for the very first thing we see on the show. Then, smartly, the Bucks are the first wrestlers out on the main show. So just like Cody on week 1, we get the Bucks out first. The crowd is going nuts. Private Party comes out, and the Bucks smartly mostly work heel in this match and to help the crowd get behind Private Party, which works perfectly. And then the Bucks are like, oh yeah, remember that we are, probably the best tag team in the world. If you guys had forgotten about that, not only are we, but we can also do it on television. And they did all their flips, got all their shit in, and then worked a body part match. Worked around Isaiah Cassidy's back, which he did a great job. I mean, this was an excellent match, and amazing that they could do a 20-minute match on TV, no commercials until the match was over. A great introduction. Oh, and by the way, they put over Private Party and probably made stars.
Yeah, I mean, I would have shouted this out as being more noteworthy that it was a great match, but I feel like you had to know this was going to be a great match, coming into it. Like the Bucks just went out to House of Glory and wrestled these guys right before the promotion started up on TV. And like just knowing that the Young Bucks are veterans and can probably work, a pretty great tag match with any 2 of the 3 of us, like, you had to know it was going to be good. But it was refreshing to see like a Young Bucks match with like a more traditional tag structure again, because we didn't watch Ring of Honor. I don't know if they were doing it there a lot, but in this promotion in PWG and a lot of the times in New Japan, they were doing the tornado tags, the 4-way tags, all this sort of stuff. It was good to see like tagging in and out with the Young Bucks and like a traditional match structure where they work on one body part for the latter half of the match. It reminded me of like that one really good Young Bucks versus Roppongi Vice match when the Roppongi Vice first won the junior tag titles. And it's like a really straightforward match, but it's like, oh, the Young Bucks are so good at this. And you see him lose and you see him eat shit. And you're like, yes, the Young Bucks are like so good at losing and making their loss matter to someone. Like you said, they're the first people out here because they're stars, and they're stars for a reason.
And I would like to say, who was the person that said, strap the rocket ship to Private Party from the get?
It was you. I
Yeah.
still don't agree with doing it, but it was you.
Yeah. In one match, these guys are now complete stars, and the Bucks are such professionals knowing, okay, we had that match at Hog. Now we're going to take what we did here and make these guys look like superstars, especially when we compare it to the match that happened on Dark that I felt like exposed a lot of Private Party's weaknesses. This match had none of that. And this match made both Cassidy and Quinn look incredible. And God, Quinn has one of the prettiest shooting star presses I've ever seen. It is nuts. Like these two guys, you give them a month, and you give them the month up to Charleston, West Virginia, and they're going to become the biggest stars in the world if you just keep on letting them have these matches with teams that can get these guys over. And really, the credit has to go to the Bucks for this, with the reasons y'all have said.
I do wonder, like you said, that maybe Private Party was a little exposed when we saw him on the AEW Dark match. That's kind of maybe the reason why I also think the Young Bucks should be the people anchoring this tag team tournament and going out there and having great matches every week. That being said, if Private Party ends up facing the Lucha Brothers in the next round, I'm pretty sure they've worked each other at House of Glory before, so they probably know what they're doing as well. So we'll just have to see. If we're moving to a semifinal of like Jurassic Express versus Private Party, like I could see how that might be not a semifinal you want to hang your hat on for a big national TV spot. I don't know.
All right, but let's talk about another tournament that's going on. It's the Major League Baseball playoffs tournament, folks. I was looking today, mybookie.ag, a good place to bet on the Major League Baseball playoffs. I know Mike and I are betting there. You can join us. All you got to do is use the promo code ELITE, and you can get double your deposit up to $1,000. I was looking today at the odds on winning the World Series.
Okay.
So they've probably taken these down for right now because Houston and Tampa are playing their Game 5 as we're recording. And last I looked, Houston was up 4-1. But have you looked at these odds recently, Mike?
I have not looked at the odds for baseball because I'm very bitter about the Texas Rangers being in a bad place right now. So
And you probably hate Houston, don't you?
yeah. I mean, they are the cross-state things. The Silver Boot is the trophy they play for each year. But tell me, what are some of the odds we can have right now for baseball?
Well, Houston is the favorite. I mean, it hurts me. I'm a Yankees fan. I think I mentioned that last week. Hurts me. Astros plus 150, Yankees plus 200. So right on their tails.
Yeah, I mean, it just looks like this year that if you want to make some, like, I'm not saying like make the bet, but if you want to look towards it, 150 for the Astros, if it's adjusted after this game, that's still a pretty great bet if you ask me.
I mean, I'm a homer, but I like the plus 200 on the Yankees.
Sure.
The Garrett Cole had to pitch in Game 5, so he's not going to be available until Game 3 of the ALCS. So gives you a little leg up for the Yankees. But I mean, the real money, I guess, is in the National League. If you can pull one of these longer bets, you got the Cards and the Nationals both at plus 400. Not sure that's long enough.
Yeah.
Longer.
Yeah, it's interesting time. I mean, there's also a lot of other things. If you're not a baseball person, there's a great week of college football up ahead of us coming up. I know that the Miami Hurricanes are playing against the number 20 Virginia Cavaliers, and that's a very tight line going right now. So there's a lot of things to do. I mean, I've been all about the esports bet on mybookie.ag, and I'm really stoked because the League of Legends World's Championship group stage starts this weekend, and I have to get my money down on SKT. I love my SK Telecom guys. Faker's the man. So you could do all these bets. We could play a game sometime where I just give you gamer tags and you could guess if they're real or fake, because some of them are wild, and I'll never include mine in there because I keep up that bit.
All right, so you can bet on baseball, college football, esports. You can bet on the Formula One race in Japan this weekend.
Might not happen.
It happens. And of course, NFL. And remember, folks, that they have in-game betting at mybookie.ag. So you don't have to just bet on the line. You can bet as the game's happening. And of course, they have parlays. I know Mike likes parlays. So, parlay some stuff together. See what happens.
Yeah, you could just set up your weekend, just throw down a $4 or $5 parlay on 8 games and get ridiculously excited when you've hit your first 4 games, and your remainder, you're just on pins and needles to see if I don't know who's a bad team in the NFL right now. Are the Carolina Panthers a bad team? But
I don't think so, but Miami is.
yeah. Oh, the Dolphins are terrible. Like, if you somehow bet on the Dolphins on that to hit your parlay, nothing's more exciting than that.
That's true. All right, we'll give you our locks of the week. Of course, the Cousin Weedmouse lock of the week is falling on hard times. It started out really good, but we've had a bad run. But we're going to give it to you again anyway. So the Cousin Weedmouse lock of the week: Boise State minus 13.5 taking on Hawaii.
I like that.
So
I think Hawaii is a fun team. I know is the Captain Rich Creech's selected college football team. They have Cole McDonald, who is one of the wildest quarterbacks in all the nation. If you get a chance, just Google Cole McDonald. He looks exactly how you expect a quarterback for Hawaii to look like. So that they are they're a little bit underwhelming this year, and Boise is always Boise State, top group of 5 team. And man, I totally get where Cousin Weedmouse is coming from on this.
all right, of course, we have the Everything Elite lock of the week. We're also 2-2. And this week, for the first time, the Jacksonville Jaguars are favored, folks. So we got the Jaguars minus 125. They're at home against the Saints. But you can also, if you want to give up only a point, you can lower your VIG -1 for the Jags. So you got to go to mybookie.ag, use the promo code ELITE, and you will get double your deposit up to $1,000. That's promo code ELITE. So visit mybookie.ag today. You play, you win, you get paid. All right, the last good thing that I have to point out from the show, I would be off-brand if I didn't point it out, is how over the women were. It was like warming to my heart, and especially Riho. Riho is a star. I mean, the crowd loved Riho.
Yeah, all their offense, it wasn't like a blowaway tag match here. And you also had Emi Sakura in there, who was on one previous AEW show, but obviously is not someone that the entire wrestling viewing audience is going to be familiar with. But the crowd was really with the women's tag match the whole way. And Rio in particular got really big reactions, which is just like kind of amazing, but cool to see. And I also just want to shout out that in that match, Emi Sakura did a combination Romero special and a Freddie Mercury call and response bit that he would always do like live at Wembley, which the crowd is not also quite hip to, but there were a few people that were singing along with her Deo thing, which is like, that's just like an amazing thing to be true of wrestling in 2019, is that's what happened on TNT last night.
I just love the fact that AEW lets Emi Sakura, let's Shima, let's Christopher Daniels just do maestro stuff, just do be wily veterans. We'll talk a little bit about the Dark match later with Darby Allin and Shima, but like Emi Sakura was just wrenching people, and I just love seeing like the wily veteran. And she's a very busy wrestler and trainer and promoter with Gotta Move, but I would love just have her stick around as much. I mean, since it seems like that Awesome Kong is not going to be a regular figure, so we don't really have like that big veteran in the division. I think Emi Sakura would be amazing for it. And of course, like Rio is the most charming wrestler in the world. Like whenever you see her come out, like the crowd she has that natural charisma that everyone thought that Bailey would have, but Rio just kind of just oozes natural charisma, and it's so exciting to see her just get the crowd behind her, and they get so excited for her double stomp move that she randomly does. It's just exciting to watch her wrestle, and it's great that they decided to strap her up and go with it.
All right. I really struggled coming up with things I didn't like about this episode. But the main thing for me, coming off of what we were just talking about, it's like, it's Britt Baker, folks. It's like the presentation is bad. The dentist thing is bad. And she was very bad on commentary. I mean, doesn't have much charisma, but also like just not particularly exciting in the ring. And she's clearly going to be pushed. So they've already announced that she's going to face Riho next week for the women's world title. I'm down on Britt Baker.
See, I totally get the intent with Britt Baker. She's someone who I'd seen at Shimmer a number of times and would like see her, whether in a singles match or tagging with Chelsea Green or whatever, and be like, how is she not already in the WWE? Because she has, all the things that they were looking for, especially a few years ago. Like, totally has a WWE look. Looks like an athlete. Has major league looking gear. Has like a relatively good amount of confidence when she's in the ring. And especially at the time in Shimmer, when she was relatively new to wrestling, you could see like, oh, she's new to wrestling, but she's really good for where she's at. She could totally hang with people in the WWE. I guess the disconnect is like women's wrestling has largely gotten presented, and the level of match quality has rapidly advanced since then. So there's just a disconnect there from where she was to where she is now. So I see why they would put her in that spot. She just hasn't quite gotten over the hump, I guess. It's kind of a thing where I think she'll be more ready and have more confidence when she's just had a ton more reps being on TV under her belt, when she's, been on the road for 52 weeks with AEW and like, seeing what works and what doesn't work. Just the question, I guess, is when you have 2 hours a week and you're going to be cycling people in and out and you don't have everybody on every show, is she going to get the opportunity to do that? So that's, I guess, the Britt Baker take from me. That wasn't my worst thing on the show. I guess my worst thing on the show would be that you had 2 matches and match time takes up a large portion of these shows that were with Jimmy Havoc losing and Sean Spears losing, which is fine. That's what those guys should be doing. Just you can beat them faster, I think.
Yeah, that's a totally valid point. And my point was going to be about Sean Spears. So it's just, he's never been as over as he was when he busted open Cody Rhodes with a chair. And they did the smart thing of, okay, this is something we're going to have to do with this guy to further draw Pete. Let's put Tully Blanchard there. Tully, who has been amazing in this role. He was fantastic in this. But that match between him and Jon Moxley, one, where was like the Moxley that was very exciting and felt like invigorated during the G1? He came out in his G1 gear, and it just kind of felt like that they wanted to have a WWE style match. And they have to come to terms about who Sean Spears is, because he should not be a guy going 50-50 with someone who's supposed to be facing a Kenny Omega at their next pay-per-view. He's not someone that really should have gone 50-50 with Cody Rhodes earlier, when Cody Rhodes is the biggest babyface on the roster. It's just that match drone on. I stopped caring. I started playing with my phone. I looked up to see the world's worst tope associate I've ever seen in my life from Sean Spears. Like, it was, I've seen both 70-year-olds and 9-year-olds do much better topes than that. And it just was something that I'm completely with you, Nate. Darby, the show should have been about Darby getting prepped up and doing like a 1-week rocket ship to him. Luckily, the closing angle, he didn't need to go 50-50 with Jimmy fucking Havoc. And you didn't need to have Jon Moxley go 50-50 with the 10 guy. It just was frustrating. And these were like my 2 sold down moments of the show, were just how these matches were and how it deflated what should have happened for these other guys. Like, the best person in the Sean Spears and Jon Moxley match was Pac on commentary. Pac was great on commentary. And it just was
wow, Mike. Come on, buddy.
Bias shining through here, I think.
Yeah. This is just a thing that this is not my show this week.
I thought you were going to say Tully, which I would have agreed with. But
Pac was great on commentary. But he was
fine. He was acceptable on commentary.
And I'm not just saying that because Pac made sure to put over Benkei, but it just was
that was cool. That part was cool.
It just is something that, like, you watch that match and it just was, you came out of this as like, is this what you should be doing about Jon Moxley when they already had a great Twitter interview with him earlier that day? No, not at all. It was absolutely disappointing.
Yeah, the Twitter promo should have been on the show, or like, because he's like your best promo guy or like your top 3 promo guy, and they haven't put the promo on the show yet. Got to do that. I will defend Moxley a little bit. Like, Mike might be forgetting how bad he was as Dean Ambrose, but he was better than that in this match. Like, he was laying his shit in against Sean Spears. Granted, Sean Spears is somebody who's been in like the WWE system for like 30 years. So maybe you're not going to get to that, G1 level with him, but there were some good, like, stiff shots in there. And our friend Champ Julius, who's like the 5th or 6th biggest lucha account on Twitter, he did point out that Sean Spears should be hitting people in the head with chairs more. That's true. If he's going to be the chairman, he's got to hit more people with chairs. If you're going to hit people with chairs as like a gimmick, you got to hit him in the head. That would get people just way hotter on Sean Spears. That would make his whole entrance, where it's like silent and he folds the chair together, would make much more sense if he was getting nuclear heat because he was giving people CTE. So, I guess there's sort of your tension on that, but that would be a quick fix maybe.
All right, let's jump to AEW Dark real quick. And so here's kind of our idea going forward with AEW Dark. So if you're not familiar with AEW Dark, it's going to be Tuesday nights at 7 on YouTube. I didn't check to see if it's still up. Is it up, available on VOD? Can you go back and watch?
Yes.
Does anybody know? Yes.
Yeah, it is. And there's about, last time I checked was over 500,000 views on YouTube.
Cool. So it's like a studio wrestling show, essentially. I mean, it's filmed, obviously, before and after the TV. So what we're going to do each week is we'll probably run down the matches after the show they happened on, and then we will run down the results the next week. And if anything is noteworthy from those matches, we'll talk about it. But there were a few people who didn't want us to spoil it on the podcast, and I guess there's really no point because we won't see them until later. So that's fine. That's what we'll do. You can go find the results if you want them. But I wanted to just start talking about this idea generally. I loved episode 1 of this. I don't know that it's something I'll watch every week, but it made me recollect so much to being a kid and watching like Saturday Morning or Superstars, those kind of shows. And I just fucking loved it. And, I don't have to like key in and really pay attention to the matches. I can just kind of play on my phone and watch them. But I thought it was a lot of fun.
I tuned in just for the Darby versus Shima match, and that delivered. So if they put matches on here that deliver, I will check them out as long as they're not more than like a week old, I guess. I kind of tuned out as the show went on and wandered away from the TV and went to do other things because I just not everything holds my attention. I will, if I have one complaint, when you do the green screen studio and then you have like the full Tony Schiavone body standing against the green screen, it just looks so goofy. Like I don't know, maybe shoot him from like the torso up, or like have fewer green screen elements so it doesn't look like he's on the fucking the set of Brendan Fraser's The Mummy or something. I don't know. It looks so weird. I hate it.
It's definitely something where their positioning and their technological capabilities really made it look like that he was on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. It just was one of those things that the production kind of didn't help. And I think this is a really smart thing for them because basically, as AB said, and he said on about this felt like a syndicated wrestling show. This felt like, I remember on Saturdays growing up, I'd stay up late and watch Shotgun Saturday Night. It just felt like that kind of thing where like they have quick matches and they cut through and it's just they preview what's coming up for the next week. And I think that's really smart. And it's gonna be smart for them to have this already in the can because this is more content they can throw on BR Live. This is more things that they could sell for TV footage because it's already taped. It's already pretty much, as of like, there's not a lot of things that have to work out of it. The one thing that I'll say about this is they air these matches in full. And for some of these wrestlers, I mentioned Private Party earlier, but Penelope Ford as well. It's a big disservice that they're showing these long matches rather than cutting them up and just doing like a joined in progress or something like that. But it's such a cool concept. And you get to see a match like Darby Allin versus Shima, which is a match that Shima has been wanting for years, ever since he found out about Darby Allin, and the fact they had such a really cool, tight, what was it, like 8-minute match, maybe 10-minute match. It was just awesome to see. And when they have stuff like this, and we'll talk about what's going to be on episode 2 when we run down results, there's enough there to be like, okay, I'll carve out an hour in that time period before between AEW Dark going up and the episode Dynamite, like watch it over lunch and just check it out. Just because it's a very pleasant show, and they've found a way to do in a 1-hour syndicated show that doesn't waste my time. And that's my big thing about AEW. Just please don't waste my time.
All right. I don't think there's anything worth talking about on that episode other than Darby Allin versus Shima, which Mike ran down. Any other thoughts on that match or any other match, Nate?
Orange Cassidy is super over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Orange Cassidy was the most over person in the 8-man match.
Of which he was not one of the 8.
Right.
Yeah. No, Darby Allin versus Shima, it's something that they worked it around the coffin drop versus the Meteora. And I felt like they did a great job with it. And the idea of, okay, Darby Allin has to face this wily veteran who knows his stuff. And I thought it was really well played. The 8-person tag, Orange Cassidy was the most over person there. As I said earlier, they kind of exposed Private Party a little bit in that match. The women's tag was a little rough. And then SE versus Jurassic Express was fun.
All right, Nate, you want to talk about BTE real quick?
Oh yeah, so I watched BTE. There hasn't been one since our. I guess they come out Mondays still. But just quick notes to say if I think to watch the show and they do something that I think might factor into future story, I think I'll mention it. Nick is still doing the bit of making the ironically bad merch, but he's really getting into it, showing some more personality there. There was some good, cute backstage footage from the debut episode of Kenny and the Bucks watching Riho's match, and Matt saying, "Oh, they're stealing the show. They're stealing the show," and Kenny just obviously being over the moon about it. And then there was a good little story segment of the Bucks being mad at Adam Page that he didn't make the save, which I noted when we went down the debut episode. Dustin Rhodes said, "Hey man, I was out there and I'm not even in the elite." So a little good continuity there, and that set up the Dustin and Adam Page team, which we saw this week. The Bucks were also disappointed in Kenny for not being out there to help them. But Kenny was, backstage tending to his injuries after going through the glass table. So, all those stories that we've been tracking with a little friction with Hangman and Kenny sort of losing his mind continue to move forward.
All right, let's run down week 2 real quick. Really just so you have the results. And if anybody wants to hop in on something to do, we're going to try to do less than we did last week, which ended up just being like a match-by-match rundown, which we swore we weren't going to do. So, if you have a note or two about a match, that's fine. Tag team tourney, first round, Private Party defeated the Young Bucks. Mark Quinn used a small package to pin Matt Jackson. We've talked about that one at length. I just wanted to say that on Twitter, there was a cool post-match promo from them. And it was kind of interesting that Nick, he's like, I don't know what happened, but it's my son's birthday. I just want to get out of here and go home. And Matt said, "Hey, man, you know what happened last week at the end of the show. You can't go home." And Nick kind of turned around. I was like, "Oh, yeah, I guess you're right." So I'm sure there's some purpose to that. I can't imagine, knowing that that's not going to come out until after everything, that they just wanted to play that part into it. So maybe there's something more to this.
They do a lot of sort of retconning because they can only get video out in certain formats or at certain times, I guess. So they do a lot of justifying stuff after the fact, which is like, hey, at least they're making an effort to justify it. Same thing that Pac did with him not getting a title match, despite him having like the best record. He mentioned that on commentary. It's like, they didn't really justify that in booking the Darby versus Jimmy match, but at least they lampshaded and said, hey, now this guy's got a bone to pick, and now he's mad because he wants the match he deserves.
Then they did the Inner Circle in-ring promo that Nate talked about. The only thing I wanted to say about this was this promo exemplified why NXT lost this battle already, because they didn't understand people's attraction to AEW. They put on Adam Cole versus Matt Riddle because they thought they were going to handicap AEW on wrestling, as if like having the biggest, best matches in the world is what draws people to AEW, when really it's about like real, sincere characters that you can care about. And NXT had that once upon a time, but it gets so exhausting watching NXT knowing those guys are going to leave.
Yeah.
And so it's like you can't get attached to them. And this is a real wrestling promotion. AEW is real. NXT is fake in that it's not only self-contained, it has a time, what's the word I'm looking for? It has an expiration date.
Right.
All the characters have expiration dates. AEW is real, has sincere characters, and you can comfortably get attached to people because this is a real promotion.
Oh,
That's all I wanted to say about that.
Yeah, and not to get in a huge tangent about this, the big thing that I've noticed now is NXT has gone to a point where they've basically done the WWE formula and have put in quote unquote acceptable wrestling, not realizing that the problem wasn't the fact that it was acceptable wrestling. The problem is that WWE formula is completely broken. So like when you like read the results there, I'm like, that sounds like the most exhausting show. This was what, a 10-minute promo with Jericho on the mic the entire time. No notes. He was reacting to the crowd. He called out the crowd at a couple points with it. And it just was a great promo. And it was one of those really exciting things. Like, I mean it. This first half hour of AEW Dynamite was one of my favorite half hours of TV in a long time.
Yeah, Aaron Talbot and I used to say this on Everything Evolves, but it's like everybody can do good wrestling matches. That doesn't set you apart from anybody else. You have to have a brand. You have to have something that people can grab onto. We always complained that Evolve didn't have that. Like Gabe Sapolsky was the Evolve brand. We always complained about that. AEW has real things you can grab onto and people you can care about and root for. And that's what separates it, not the matches. All right, we had a world title eliminator. Whoever won this was going to face Chris Jericho at the next television show. And Darby Allin defeated Jimmy Havoc with the coffin drop. A huge moment for Darby.
Yeah, I kind of, half buried Jimmy Havoc earlier by saying that I would just like to see him lose faster. That being said, probably the best Jimmy Havoc match I've ever seen. Granted, I haven't seen a lot, but like it was, totally with it throughout. And the crowd really got behind Darby here, which is what you want to see.
Riho and Britt Baker defeated Emi Sakura and Bea Priestley. Baker submitted Sakura with the Rings of Saturn and then like a mandible claw type thing where she just like grabs their jaw. I guess it's like a dentist thing. It's very strange.
Yeah, it looked better on Dark, but it looked really bad here. It's just another thing about Britt Baker that's just not up to snuff, I guess. It needs work.
I like the finisher.
The Best Friends did a weird promo that was essentially built just to do an Orange Cassidy spot and for the crowd to go crazy for Orange Cassidy.
Yeah, I tweeted about this. Like, all they really did was like, "Hey, here's the guy everybody likes," and the crowd cheered. And that was and it was a doubly weird segment because then they did the blackout to have Shawn Spears enter. Just weird.
Jon Moxley defeated Shawn Spears with the Death Rider / Paradigm Shift. Kenny Omega afterward came out with barbed wire weapons, including a broom wrapped in barbed wire, and Pac attacked him from behind. Pac had been on commentary during Moxley and Spears. And the interesting thing about Pac's commentary was him saying, hey, why aren't they giving me a title shot? Why are Darby Allin and Jimmy Havoc up for a title shot when I'm undefeated and I've beat Kenny Omega and somebody else, Hangman Page?
Yeah, again, a tidy little retcon, effective. Kenny with the barbed wire broom. That's like, to me, that's like the good side of pro wrestling ridiculousness. Like, there's actually a justification for his trademark thing being a broom. So, he's setting up a hardcore feud with Jon Moxley. Let's wrap it in barbed wire. That's like obviously silly, but like the fun side of silly.
It's interesting to me. They brought Pac in just to do this commentary. He didn't work a dark match. He's been at both TV shows. I just think maybe he's going to be here more often than we thought.
Maybe he has an agreement with Tony that whenever Tony's flying back from the big football match, that he just hops on the private plane and flies out over as well. I mean, I'm surprised to see him here too, because to my knowledge, he's not been doing as many dates since his time in Dragon Gate's been over. So it's weird. And, I think this was a good retcon, and Kenny's barbed wire broom is just ridiculous.
Yeah, interested to see what Pac does next and how they build. Obviously, he's going to be in the mix, so I want to see where that's going. Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara defeated Hangman Page and Dustin Rhodes. Jericho hit perhaps the worst Judas effect yet on Dustin, and it was all Dustin's fault, by the way, and got the win, but at least he hit the Judas effect. That's really all that matters.
Yeah, this was a fun little main event, I thought. I thought the makeshift tag teams were a fun thing. That, Paige and Dustin Rhodes is like a little cowboy gimmick, and they're on the, their elite alliance. So that is fun. And then, like I said, the Hager interference was a fun part of this match. And like Sammy Guevara is Chris Jericho's shitty little, sidekick. I mean, shitty in like the annoying way and not like the bad way. Was also a fun pairing. And then the post-match angle, it at one point kind of seemed like it was losing steam. It's like, oh, this is kind of the same thing that we saw last week. But I thought they totally took it to a new level with the MJF and Darby involvement. Both those guys got giant reactions for their role in the post-match angle, which, like, considering they weren't on TV 2 weeks ago, is like a great achievement. So,
yeah, I mean, these angles are getting everybody over more. I mean, what more do you want out of pro wrestling angles? And it's like, when it's over, I just can't remember the last time I felt this way. When it's over, I'm like, fuck, I can't wait to watch this next week. Like, I'm already excited.
Yeah, and on top of that, if you're in the arena knowing that there's going to be more matches taped for Dark, you're not sending them home like exhausted. Now they're going to be amped up for the next few matches. And I mean, they even had Cody do a promo after this. I think I forgot if it was posted by himself or posted by the AEW Twitter account. That was another great way of just keeping everyone revved up. So like this is such a smart thing, knowing that they're doing essentially 3 hours worth of taping and one of the hours they're trying to save for later date.
All right, here are the matches for Dark Episode 2 that'll be coming out Tuesday at 7 p.m. Again, we're not going to spoil them now, so don't get your panties in a wad, but we'll talk about them next week. So the pre-show, they had Peter Avalon taking on Kip Sabian and Sonny Kiss. And after the show, they had Hybrid 2, which I guess is the new name for Angelico and Jack Evans.
It sucks. That name's terrible.
And they took on SCU and Shima as a team and the Dark Order. Wait, who was... I'm very confused about these teams.
Yeah.
SCU and Shima versus the Dark Order and another team.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I got it.
8-man tag.
It was 4-on-4.
Right. Yeah. Like the match on Dark 1. So.
Okay. And the very last match, unsanctioned, Kenny Omega took on Joey Janela. So that seems to be the big match. And there's been a lot of talk that it's very good.
Yeah. Buzz that it was a wild match, actually. It's a little goofy to have unsanctioned dark matches that don't count for rankings and then sanctioned dark matches that do count in the win-loss. Like the stats thing, the win-loss thing is got to be untenable at some point. This is how much, all you really have to do is give lip service to that stuff anyway. So we'll see, what kind of transition they can make until they just make it like lip service and stop making it seem like it's going to be this hard and fast thing.
It's also kind of smart, though, to do the unsanctioned match here since they said they're not going to be on TNT. So having them in for Dark for YouTube right now, and if they need to cut it out for international syndicators, makes sense to do it there. And don't worry about the win-loss records and how they're going to maneuver it. I'm going to work on my own sabermetrics rating system that's going to consider everything. They'll be giving you probably sometime, unless I forget about it, the precise ranking of who are the top wrestlers are in AEW. So Nate, I've got you covered.
Can't wait. All right, quick preview, episode 3, October 16 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He did a much better job this week, JR saying, we're in Philadelphia next week. He did mention it's already sold out, but at least they're getting in the habit of putting over the next shows. All right, so the world title's on the line. Chris Jericho taking on Darby Allin.
Awesome.
Just like a fucking wild idea. I just can't wait to see what it looks like.
Fucking awesome.
The women's world title, really like that they're calling it the world title. Like that's I don't think anyone else has done that as far as I can recall. So that's cool. Riho taking on Britt Baker. The disappointment here is no real build to this. I guess we see Britt continuing to get wins, so it makes sense from that perspective, from the win-loss perspective. But they just we're announcing it. That's going to be the match. So that was a bummer. But from my perspective, Riho is so over, and you need to establish champions, I think, in this promotion to establish the titles. No reason Britt Baker should win this match, and not just because I don't like her.
Yeah, and you have the whole B. Priestley thing working in the background as well. So, this is
exactly
it makes sense. Win-loss wise, Britt has won her first 2 matches on TNT or on Dark, so she is coming in with one of the larger winning streaks outside of Riho in the division. So, if they marked, okay, week 3 we're having a women's world title match, by statistics she should be the one having the title match. But yeah, it's just I want them to solidify Riho because I'm really excited for Riho when she's back in Stardom, that she's going to have the high-speed championship belt, which looks very similar to the AEW women's world belt, just because I want to see those 2 belts together, because I love seeing lots of belts together. So that's why I hope Riho wins, other than the fact that she rules.
Yeah, I'm fine with no real build for this because it's a TV defense. It's going to be a holdover defense. Sometimes you just have those to have them, to put them as defense number 1, and they don't have to be a big deal.
Do you think because they're doing 2 singles title challenges that there's a chance that one of them changes hands and the only possible one would be the women's title?
That would be very surprised if that happened. I would not do that.
Yeah, that'd be lame. and not just because of how much of a Riho fan this podcast is. Just I feel like you need to solidify these titles and make the idea that, okay, if you're a champion, that means you're an incredible wrestler in your division, and they should just keep that up. I mean, with how Riho's been, I think that she's the person that deserves to be champion as well. So, yeah,
you just establish the belts, have the person that's the best hold the belt for a while and establish them. If you're making decisions based on, oh, well, this title's being retained, so the other one should, flip, like that's Vince McMahon thinking. They should not do that. That would be bad if they did that.
We have 2 other first-round matches in the tag team tournament. SCU takes on the Best Friends, and the Lucha Bros take on the Jurassic Express. And that match will be to decide who faces Private Party. The SCU versus Best Friends winner will face the Dark Order. So, I don't know. Well, I'll be interested to see. I'm not making any more predictions in the tag team tournament, I don't think.
It's going to be interesting. I think that Lucha Bros and Jurassic Express, that pairing, I'm a little bit less confident in that sort of match than I am for SCU versus Best Friends. Like SCU Best Friends, they've had variations of this kind of match in Ring of Honor. And I think even in World Tag League in New Japan. So I'm not too worried about it. But this will be a big test, I feel like, to see how, Jurassic Express really is on this kind of stage. So I'm excited for it. And I think there might be an extra match just because they've been having 5 matches on Dynamite. So we'll see something else gets announced beforehand.
All right, a few other things before we get out of here. Somebody asked me on Twitter to kind of look at the Stardom Goddesses of Stardom Tag League because B. Priestley and Riho are both in the Tag League. And they wanted me to kind of check into how does that affect whether they're going to be on AEW. So I went through the whole schedule and paired it up with the AEW TV schedule. And here's what I think. So on October 14, Stardom's doing a Korakuen Hall show. And that features B. Priestley, but not Riho. Obviously, Riho's going to be on the October 16 show. We've already talked about that. So that's where she'll defend against Britt Baker. Now, before the 10/23 show, Riho and B are both on that show. That's enough time because of the time difference. That's enough time for both of them to get to the 10/23 show. But I wouldn't be surprised if neither shows up on that show. I mean, Riho's been on every show so far.
Yeah, and it's something similar to, like, I know Shima has been staying over in North America, but I know that he has some shows coming up for Big Japan and the OWE and Japan shows. I think one of them is actually on, it might be on the 13th of November. So it's not surprising and it's doable. And of course, we're getting closer to the giant DDT show that's going to have both Kenny and Riho on it. So I hope they all have filed their medallion rewards or whatever airline they use, because they're going to be making some miles over the next month and a half.
Yeah, if you keep going for 10/20, Riho and B are working Stardom. So again, they can get to AEW by 10/23. That's no problem, but who knows if they will. Same 10/27, Riho's working, but B's not, right before the 10/30 TV. I guess it gets most interesting for Full Gear. And what we can tell from the schedule is that B. Priestley is working in Japan on November 9. So she will not be at the Full Gear show. Riho is not booked for that show. So we can expect that she will be on Full Gear, hopefully defending the women's title. And then that would give her, there's another AEW TV November 13. So she could do Full Gear, stick around for November 13, get back to Japan. There's a November 15 is the final Goddesses of Stardom Tag League show. She's not booked on that show currently, but it's the finals. So if somehow she and Starlight Kid make it to the finals, she would be on that show. So that's what I've discovered about the Stardom Goddesses of Stardom Tag League and how it meshes with the AEW TV schedule. Any thoughts, gentlemen?
No.
Excellent.
Good job.
One last note before we get out of here. Master P has bought House of Glory Wrestling, according to Master P. Very excited.
Hog talk time.
Talk.
Okay, so here's my take. I believe he announced this in an Instagram comment talking about like a new reality show or something.
Maybe.
Okay, so is this a work? Is he the worked owner of Hog?
I would not be too surprised if this might be kind of a legit thing, if only because Amazing Red has been the owner and trainer of Hog since its since it started. And it seems like after the whole thing about him abruptly retiring and then now is doing all this stuff with New Japan, he might end up like having some more work of New Japan, so he wouldn't be around for that. But at the same time, I don't know whom, if he's just going to plain old sell it to Master P, I don't know who Master P is going to bring in as the trainer for Hog. But this is just amazing, and this shows you how relevant AEW is, because of course AEW is Hog adjacent. So it's another win. AEW can't stop winning.
Yeah, I basically just spent whatever day this was announced. I spent the whole day thinking of Master P lyrics and how to work Hog into them. Did a few tweets. So if you can think of any really good Master P lyrics with like working Hog into it, would love to hear it.
Send those directly to Aaron. I don't need to see them on the show account.
Yeah, just straight to him. I think his DMs are closed, so you're going to just have to add him. So
he might not save you.
Oh,
he's
no,
he's
DMs
pretty
are open,
stingy.
baby.
Oh, the DMs are open. No, just clog up his timeline. Clog up the timeline, not the DMs. Clog up the timeline, people, with your best Master P Hog ones.
In the words of Luke Harper, the DMs are wide fucking open, baby. So bring them on. But yeah, just at me. That's fine. I'm into it. I need a hashtag. I'll think of a hashtag for it. It'll be good.
Just love, of course, that Master P is getting back into wrestling at the same time that WCW is revived, and that it happens in a AEW adjacent promotion is all the more poetic. So looking forward to him popping up in a BTE with Private Party or something in the near future.
Yeah, a lot of people have suggested Master P managing Private Party. I think that's a great idea. Would love to see it. Okay, I think that's it. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at Everything AEW. I'm at Aaron Like the Car. Nate is at Epitasis. Mike is at Fuji Heya. Subscribe to the podcast. Just search Everything Elite in the podcast app of your choice. Smash that subscribe button. Give us a rating, a review on the podcast app. Sponsor this podcast.
We did get a 5-star review that I want to shout out. From your boy Pack. Says, Pack, I get it, like Pac, but Pack. So your boy Pack calls us the best AEW podcast. And he says, if this isn't the best AEW podcast, then Britt Baker isn't a dentist. And folks, Britt Baker is a dentist.
Your boy Pack is right.
There you go. Thank you for the review. And I think we've probably hit Britt Baker enough on this show. I don't know if we can do an aside about Britt Baker, but she did like a joke tweet about her being a dentist from, I think, friend of the show, Maxwell RBR. So, she's a smart gal. They're going to figure it out, I think.
Yeah, I do enjoy, I guess B Priestley gave her a black eye in the match last night. And B has just been going at her mercilessly on Twitter, which I think is very funny. And so I enjoy their feud. I've really liked their story, honestly. She's a little boring, that's all. But I like the story. All right, as I was saying, this great content. You want to throw us a few bucks, obviously. So go to redcircle.com/shows/everything-elite. Click sponsor this podcaster. You can do a one-time or a monthly donation, which we would appreciate. And I think that's it. So for Mike, for Nate, I'm Aaron. We will see you next week.